them as they come. For the recorded session, this is the NatickFOSS open source user group. Open source and Libre software are our focus as a group, trying to support each other as possible to help one another know how to make the most of Linux, the operating system that most open source free software users are involved with, though there are many other kinds of software that are capable of doing a lot of stuff. This group typically has found Linux as the operating system that supports most of our needs. I have shared my screen with today's agenda on it, so I will flip my view over to that, and we'll get going and see what we have for discussion around any of these items. I don't see anybody that's new, so as is typical of our meetings online, we probably don't need the introductory slide talk. And the FOSS news is a variety of different things, including the reorganization of a website that called opensource.com recently under some management issues. It was mostly a Red Hat sponsored website, and they are reorganizing according to this link. The community is hard at work on something new. Now, this is actually the original view, but I encountered it by following a person who is associated with the both.org. And this may or may turn out to be the replacement for opensource.org. It's a little difficult to know exactly how things are going because it is not clear what the transition is, but these people are attempting to create a collaborative substitute for opensource.com as I understand it. And the new site is recently up. It's not necessarily a complete replacement as yet. Is anybody else with ties to any of this able to give us a comment about it?
I haven't spoken to my contacts in the open source initiative in quite a while, but I could pull threads if necessary, I guess.
Is Fedora reorganizing their entire space, or is that just something that is the website?
No clue.
No clue. Okay. Well, it's on our radar anyway, so maybe that will be something we'll follow up with in a future meeting. Not everything on our list is capable of a full demo because sometimes it's brand new news and we don't have much detail behind it. One thing I thought was worth noticing, I think this is a topic that we talked about in the last meeting or meeting before. There are groups who are mostly in Europe that are federal kind of groups who are attempting to fund what is called sovereign tech projects. And this particular one, FLOSS Fund, is giving $1 million a year for free and open source projects to make sure that the FOSS is available and avoiding the problems of having hit and miss user funding. One of the things that they are not necessarily involved in is the Wi-Fi for EU. It's an initiative to provide Wi-Fi connections for citizens in public spaces like parks, squares, buildings, libraries, and so on. And this, I think, is interesting because having access to the internet isn't really a universal thing as yet, in spite of being an attempt to have everybody get broadband. It's not really happening. There's an app involved in this that allows you to locate where these Wi-Fi connections are so that you can go to them if you're not already near enough. I think this is the kind of thing that would make sense at a community level here in the United States. But aside from paying mostly AT&T and or the Comcast group, there aren't too many real serious Wi-Fi connections that you can get access to. I know I don't generally log into anything when I'm at an unsecured site. Anybody else have similar experience? Bob, go ahead.
I just want to mention that the other big player is Verizon, and there's also Astound, formerly RCN.
Yes, but I'm not aware that Verizon puts Wi-Fi in public access places.
Generally not. It seems to be limited to their wireless subscribers.
Right. And while I think it's a really neat idea to be able to say, yes, I'm a subscriber and I have access because I'm a subscriber, these public services are really truly public, and that relieves the problem of getting online if you need to. Now, I'm sure that there are security issues to be dealt with, but with some care, these might be a viable process to try to institute in a more widespread manner, both locally and across the nation. That's a political move, of course, and those kinds of things have to be brought forward. I know Dick Miller, our group's original spokesperson, made very great attempts to get the town to buy into that kind of stuff. Remember seeing him at a couple of town meetings here in Natick. Didn't get too far, but that's part of the political process. Okay. And we have a note here about the right to repair with a copyright connection. This is pluralistic.net, personal blog by a person who really is into tech all over the place, Cory Doctorow. And he has written here about the various connections that have been made to allow for McFlurry machines in McDonald's to be serviced locally without having to go back to the company that manufactured the machines. And every one of these is related to a particular section of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act from 1998. And it is a felony because of that section to help someone to change their own computer, how their computer works so it serves them instead of a distant corporation. So anything that has a proprietary piece of software, you can't get at it to fix it if it doesn't work for you. You have to call the company. They come out, they work with you. And this series of different links are worth going through if you haven't already. These are all sorts of links about cars and tractors and treadmills with their proprietary requirements. And a bit of sad news. We have one of the earliest BBS, Bulletin Board System people, Ward Christensen. He was in many ways one of the instigators of the internet as we know it, being able to share information back and forth with others. And he died at the age of 78. And this is an obituary for him. I don't know that we need to actually look into that because there are noted ads. I didn't post this one on the agenda, which reminds me, always make recommendations for things to be on the agenda. And if you are present during the meeting, we'll try to get you the opportunity to talk about them. Which leads us to the FOSS history item here, only one this month. This was during last month in Halloween. Microsoft Corporation's documents about how they felt Linux played into their plans. And Dick Miller was going to talk about that, but he is not here today. I do remember talking about these in the past. Does anybody else have a comment? Okay. Then I'll move right along. Hot software. One of the nice things about Linux as an operating system, as all of those who are present at the meeting are very familiar, some people like to use products that tie into their favorite version of the Linux operating system. The Fedora project is run by Red Hat. Red Hat is a company that is one of the old stalwarts of the Linux community. And they produce Fedora as a community project, along with their Red Hat Enterprise Linux version that they sell and support for commercial ventures that need a very powerful system. Fedora is typically for those of us who are amateurs and or not in need of a commercial support package. And what we have in this article is a description of a variety of different packages of software that make your Fedora version very specifically tailored to the kind of work you want to do. For example, there's an astronomy package. You can download the tools and install them yourself, or you can get a version of the Fedora operating system with these packages specifically built together to allow overlap in ways that might be a lot of work to do on your own. And they have put together that set of tools for those who want to explore astronomy on their own. There's another one about neuroscience. If you're doing visual design, multimedia, they have a design suite. There's a games collection, Jam for audio enthusiasts with all the software needed to edit and create and produce music on Linux, and on and on. It's a whole bunch of different versions or subversions of the Linux operating system packaged effectively. I thought that was really a good thing to look at, in addition to knowing that we have Canonical and others who support their own mixes of software. KDE Group does the Plasma Desktop, and the GNOME Group does their version of a desktop. I hear a request to speak. Oh, no, it's Jerry arriving late. Welcome, Jerry.
Hi, I'm here.
Good news, good news. Okay, we were just talking about the Fedora flavors that are out there. And if you have anything to add to that discussion, do you use a particular version yourself?
I use GNOME.
I mean the package of software, like the astronomy package when you install. No, okay.
No, I have mine set more for software development.
Okay. There was one in that list that I noticed for educating yourself in Python, which probably would be a good place to have some people begin the journey to becoming your level of software developer.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to get them there, but to get them started.
Yeah, Python is a good language to learn on.
Okay, and thank you. Hot Software continues with Bob Premack, prepared, I hope, to give us his upgrade experience and a little bit of a tutorial on how Linux Mint works for him. Are you ready to go? And I'll release my screen, Bob.
Yes, indeed. I am ready to start my share as soon as you release yours.
All right. Stop sharing. There it goes.
Let me just save my notes and push them aside. And I will start sharing. I share. And I want the entire screen. Share. Okay, so everybody's got my screen that right now shows Jerry. And what I am going to do is just briefly go over the kinds of things that I did. Mint has an upgrade from let me show everybody. Mint has an upgrade from 21 to 22. And since we have several members of the group who are using Mint in place of Ubuntu now, I think it is of some interest what kinds of things happen during an upgrade. The first thing I want to do is go through just some notes. I'm going to save the detailed stuff because, yeah, let's start in with the things that that they say you have to watch out for when you upgrade. Things to know. One of my references is how to upgrade, and it's a step-by-step tutorial. And it's a regularly updated guide at NatickFOSS. And you want to make sure, first of all, that you're on Mint 21.3. That's the only way you can do an in-place upgrade. If you're as far back as Mint 20, it's probably best to do a fresh install. After all, most of us have some kind of a backup of our home directory or user data, or maybe we have a separate partition. So it isn't that big a deal to upgrade the root partition. But however you do it, you want to ensure that you are in fact on Mint Virginia, as they indicate here. Now you want to, of course, have your system updated. And I did this. I installed all the available updates. And once that's done, you make a backup. Now, this backup stage, there's a little bit of a fooler in the Mint 22 installer. There's something new that it does. I want to get my detailed release notes. That might be this one. Nope, that isn't. Okay, well, and in any event, you do, of course, your sudo apt update and then sudo apt install mint upgrade. And that brings you to this thing. There are some preferences here. And one of them is, by default, it's going to try to make a backup. And it's going to use timeshift, which is great if you've already got timeshift set up. But if you don't have timeshift set up, it will take the root directory of your present partition and make the entire system backup there. This can lead to space issues. And it also is not a very good way to make a backup anyway, because if anything goes wrong, you're not going to be able to get in there. So there is a slider that allows you to not make not check for and not make the timeshift backup if you haven't been doing that. I have different methods that I use other than timeshift. So that's the big gotcha on timeshift. The other thing is, if you have to do a timeshift backup while you're doing your upgrade, it's going to take a lot longer to do the upgrade. Another way to shorten up the time that it takes to do an upgrade is to switch to a special repo that's called Fastly. And this is also relatively new, and it's still in beta. And there are instructions in one of my references for exactly how you will look at your etc apt sources and modify that so that instead of going to the Virginia Linux Mint or the Wilma is the 22, instead of using those upstream repos, you will be switching to Fastly Linux Mint IO, and it's still Virginia at the time that you start. And then you continue with your upgrade, rather. So you go through that upgrade. Now, at various points in the upgrade process, and I'm not sure it's in this one, it isn't. So let's see if there's anything in there. No. At various points in the upgrade process, you will find, all right, this may be it. Okay. There's a series of tests that get performed, as you would in any upgrade for any operating system. And the upgrade to 22 Wilma, after initial tests, you may get prompted for the timeshift backup, or if the slider is not to do that, you won't need to do that. And then, okay, the recent timesheets, this is where the slider is in the upgrade tool. It's under preferences, and you can slide that slider to off if you need to. But there are some PPAs, and there are some, there may be some software that you have that needs to be downgraded because there are going to be problems during the upgrade. So this is they give an example of a PPA that isn't available during the upgrade, and there are also going to be unsupported PPAs in some cases. I had 3 or 4 of them, and so these are things you may have to take out and then put back after the upgrade. Foreign packages refers to anything that is not recognized by the upgrade, and I had several of those, which again were things where I had gotten upstream versions and they needed to be brought back. The upgrade tool can perform the fix, or you can do it yourself. I did it using the Synaptic Package Manager. So there's various ways of doing that. Then it does another phase in which it does a simulation in order to see, and it does some downloading in order to see whether things are going to work. Usually they will, but sometimes they won't. Then it ran through all this upgrade, and then it finally did the package downloading and the installing. And when it did this upgrade, sometimes after the upgrade, you will find that there are newly orphaned packages. Those also will show up as foreign. And again, the installer offers to fix them, and you may have to do that. In each of these cases, when you're finished, you will probably want to do upgrades to get back to where you were. And again, when you're using the Fastly repo, you are making this process go probably a lot faster. Mine went less than an hour, but I have very up-to-date hardware. You should allow probably about an hour and a half, an hour and 3/4. Sometimes it takes a little longer, depending on whether or not you need to make a snapshot. Okay, so now you removed the orphan packages, and there's a finalizing phase where it'll do some cleanup of its own. And then it will, if you're lucky, and I had no real difficulty, the upgrade was successful. So then you reboot, and it'll show you what you're in. Now, Mint 22 uses the upgraded kernel, which is very similar to what Ubuntu has done. They took a big jump in Ubuntu from 5.19 to 6. Something, and so did Mint. My Mint, I'll show you the system details. My Mint has kernel 6.8. That's a higher kernel version than any other Linux that I have. So it was a big jump that they took. It should help with hardware issues, but you may find some software that's not quite up to it yet. And so the other things that are noteworthy, I want to go into something where I took some notes and I told somebody how I did it. Okay, so I unchecked because of the slider, foreign packages, some troublemakers, which included packages I had added from outside of apt. And there were no really serious damages, just a few things to add back. My LibreOffice is from the LibreOffice website, and it's much more up to date than what's in the apt repo. That didn't bother the updater. And then finally, once I had switched to the Fastly repo, after I finished, I switched back to the regular Mint Wilma repo. And the reason why I do that is to avoid any possible beta issues with Fastly. It may have some issues. I don't know. I haven't seen any. One interesting thing during the upgrade, they say that your Cinnamon desktop may experience a shift in the fonts that are used. My date and time display suddenly turned into Urdu lettering, but that resolved by the end of the upgrade. I don't know why it was Urdu, but it was Urdu. So let's see what we've got here. Okay. Now, where am I at? So that's pretty much what happened with my update, with my upgrade. And so now right now I am in the partition where I had Mint 22. And before I relinquish control of the screen share, nothing in chat that I need to respond to here, so I'll stop sharing. Has anybody else had experience with Mint and with upgrading? I should say and or.
I was impressed. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I was impressed by Mint years ago in install fests. And one of the issues we had back then was Broadcom chips for Wi-Fi. And it was a real pain to upgrade them. And
Yeah.
it was very easy to do it through Mint. Actually, Mint pointed to Ubuntu, and I got
Yeah.
it out of the Ubuntu repository. Then that stopped. But I thought Mint was a very good distribution back then.
Yeah. I would say for Wi-Fi issues, the upgraded kernel is helpful. And also, yes, you can pull from outside of the normal Mint repo. I also run Linux Mint Debian Edition, which is even thinner on coverage. It tends to be very conservative in what it has in its repos. I had to go outside of the repo for some media codecs, and I had to go outside of the repo for some other stuff. And LMDE does not support PPAs. So I did have to take one thing from source and compile it. But that was only one thing for one media codec. And after that, it kept updating correctly. So I don't know how Broadcom Wi-Fi works. I see that Arnie has something to say. Can't hear you.
You need to get closer to your mic, Arnie. No, still not hearing you, Arnie.
Arnie, if we can't make an audio connection, maybe put something in the chat. We're hearing something now. Yeah, go ahead, Arnie, if you can get. No, still no audio. Well,
maybe Arnie can get his mic issues rectified and ask again later.
Yeah. We can try again later on that.
Otherwise, are you all set, Bob?
Yeah, I've covered what I wanted to.
I admit that I am slow to upgrade myself, and I'm getting feedback. I think it's Arnie's open mic that isn't doing quite what it's supposed to. There it is. Now it's off. Thank you, Arnie. I do plan to update from my current KDE, which is the 2204 long-term, to the 2404 long-term, but I'm hesitant to do it. And I know I mentioned that a month ago, so yeah, I'm slow. But there are too many things that are involved sometimes. And until I feel that I'm completely ready, I put them off. And I know that that's not an uncommon thing with us ordinary users. We're happy to use the long-term support as long as it's supported. Okay, let me share again here. Get back to my Firefox window. There it is. Is everybody seeing that? Ooh.
Actually, no, we're seeing email.
Yeah, I don't want to see the email here. Let me go back and unshare. Stop screen sharing. Start again. So, screen sharing, window, Firefox. I think I clicked on the other by mistake. Okay. I know that if Dick were with us, he would have some comments about the Linux Mint upgrade process. I believe he is now a Linux Mint user. Just a quick hot software here. Those of you who are Inkscape users should have had their switch over from 1.3 to 1.4. Somebody's comment was coming forward. Okay, I'll go back. It has a lot of under the cover changes and has some new abilities that are worth knowing. I have not explored too many of them. It's got a nice new graphic going with it. Tells you the features here and what you can do that are new things. If you're not an Inkscape user, that's understandable. You might not have graphic design pretensions, but it's a very valuable tool for anybody who does illustrations of any kind. Doesn't have to be a very complex illustration to make this program useful. So if you are interested, now is a good time to do it. The one thing that they are holding off until 1.5 is the ability to do print quality PDF exports. Right now, PDF exports are using colors that are RGB, red, green, blue, web level. But if you're going to do commercial print of a postcard or a poster of some kind, the commercial printers typically want some color set known as CYMK, which is just another way of describing colors. And 1.5 looks like it's going to be the place where that becomes possible. That's been one of the things people have complained about with Inkscape, because it uses an PDF exporter that is just a web level PDF generator. But that's coming, and 1.4 has actually built quite a few pieces under the hood, making that next release possible. Did anybody have a question related to that? Let me see. One hand up. Maybe that's still back from Arnie. Okay. The next item on my list here is a very nice video by a person named Bob Braxman, who in this video takes the process of switching from Windows to Linux and goes through all the reasons why people sometimes complain, and shows the 6 most common problems that people encounter. Now, for most of our group present, it's not an issue. We're already using Linux and we're not switching from Windows to do it. But this is a good video for those who are considering going from Windows to Linux. We'll give you the chance to understand the things that an expert encounters, and this person, Bob Braxman, explains quite well how you can solve those problems fairly easily. Okay. Hot Software continues with 4 open source chat platforms. Now, those of us who are here in the meeting have a built-in chat with Jitsi, and a lot of people use programs like that, like Jitsi, to share their screens and talk to each other, and the chat is really built right into the software that we're using. But if you are going to use chat elsewhere so that it's a secondary external program, you will want to consider which one does the job for you the best way you can. The one that I'm most familiar with these days, although I don't use it a lot, is Internet Relay Chat. It's one of the oldest chat systems out there, and is a complicated process unless you use their web client. Web client sometimes makes it easiest. But if you are in need of a way to chat with a group beyond the Jitsi level, you might want to consider taking a look at some of these in this article. Anybody have experience with chats they want to share? Not sure who that. Oh, Jerry's got 2 screens up here on mine. All right. No comments coming. The next group of subtitle composer review are for people who are interested in video production. And I don't know anybody in this group that, with possible exception of Dennis, would be interested in these, but I produced the links for those who might want to understand subtitles for their videos. I don't know about it myself, but you can see that this has a large number of different ways to add subtitles and handles them efficiently. If Dennis is with us, actually, do you have any comment about using this kind of software in your own work?
I have never used something to produce subtitles so far.
That answers that question quickly. So we'll go on from those two links and probably benefit from passing over Dick Miller's to 2410 and Unity 2410, which have just come out. And unfortunately, Dick is not with us today. I mentioned at the beginning that there was some fertilizer issue going on, which might or might not have been explosive, and they were taking care of it outside his house. So he expected to be outdoors for quite a while, if ever to come in safely again. And we certainly hope that they don't explode. I'm only about 3 miles from his house where I live, and I've not heard a giant explosion, so maybe they're okay. We'll cross my fingers.
Yeah, when I was walking this morning at Shoppers World, we had a fire truck come into Shoppers World, and it was actually a fire. That was on the corner, right across the street from the Tesla supercharger, on the corner of Shoppers World Drive. Apparently, somebody might have flicked a cigarette into the mulch in the
Ouch.
corner there. They took it out with a fire extinguisher.
Well, better get it put out than to have another brush fire going. We have too many of those in our dry state today and these days.
Yeah, Ed had a lot of them up there and not far from his home.
Yeah. You had fire trucks going up and down overnight for a couple of days, if I recall correctly.
Yes, he did.
Very scary.
Yep.
Okay. The handwriting RSS feed is something I actually do for my website and is quite efficient now that I do it on a fairly regular basis. But this tutorial was something that was presented online recently. And for those who are interested in what RSS, really simple syndication as a method to spread the word from your site to any person with a feed reader. They're not as common as they once were, but it's a great way to share content on the web without a headache. People can sign up for it and follow what you're doing without having to constantly visit your site until you put something new up. I skipped over that one. So if you have an interest in really simple syndication, I recommend reading this article. It's a very practical implementation guide. Hot hardware. The first one's sort of a joke, except it's a real thing. This is a robot that has a flamethrower mounted on it. It's a robot that's like those bulls or dogs in the design of the robot itself, but with a flamethrower mounted on its back. It could theoretically go into a fire zone and help to create fire bricks, bring out some of the brush in the way the fire is headed and make a safer thing for firemen by making them not have to go do this kind of work themselves. Of course, if the robot gets damaged, you probably invested a huge amount in getting it there, but it's certainly better than being the person who dies because you were trying to do a good job as a fireman. It's called the Therminator. I don't recommend that you go out trying to buy one unless you're a fireman. But on the positive side, another robot that I have come to really love is my rice cooker. And it is a nice story about how the rice cooker produced by the what's the name? Toshiba of for a while, and other electronics. The work done by a Japanese housewife responded to the basis on which a successful rice cooker was accomplished. And this, unfortunately, is one of the two pop-ups that happened during my first link with this story. I do recommend reading it only for understanding the necessity of community effort. You can't just be a technologist all on your own. You really need to get people with good practical experience. And sometimes that involves other skills than tech skills. There's no point in making a beautiful application if it doesn't do what the people who really use it need from it. And a rice cooker that does great rice is a blessing. We have one that I love. We just cooked with it today, and in 20 minutes there was the rice, all done perfect. Okay, turning an Android phone into a ham radio is a project that is a maker level DIY project, and I don't recommend that you get into this if you're not already very heavily into electronics, but I thought the link was worth it in case anybody wanted to find out how the process worked. Ham radio is something that some of our members here are involved with, and I put it out here for that group.
I'm going to have to look at that page, but it sounds like something that might be undesirable.
Well, it's actually, as I understand, a side mounted item that just allows you to use some of the features of your Android phone to help control the
If you're using it as an expansion of the user console, or connecting it to a software-defined radio, yeah, that's. But the clickbait headline sounds bad.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. I don't think it's an internal thing you can just make your Android phone on its own run the system.
Yeah, somebody
certainly
raised a hand or chatted or something.
You broke up for me.
No,
I
that
didn't
was
catch
Arnold a
that
while
last.
ago. Hasn't been turned off yet.
Okay. No, he's muted at the moment, I think. But it's not everybody's cup of tea anyway. This next one, even though it is not open source and or typical computer level technology, It's a thing that is worth reading about because right now lithium batteries are problematic, and they're commonly used in cars like Jerry's Tesla. And when those batteries have to be removed because they're old enough, getting the lithium back out of the batteries is currently a very expensive and very problematic issue. They don't recover all of it. This new recovery article talks about researchers who have found a faster way and a more clean method for removing the lithium white gold of all these batteries that are out there. Instead of taking hours, it takes 30 seconds and 50% increase of recovery rate for a material, the lithium, that is in relative short supply. So if you are a person who wants to keep up on how your batteries are being recycled, that's a great article to read about. And then, again, not really a free software issue, but an article about electrostatic motors based on work that Ben Franklin, one of our founding fathers, was involved with back in 1747 at least theoretical level. This article tells how researchers are building functioning electrostatic motors that do not involve heavy batteries and windings of wire. They use capacitance instead. And again, this is not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but it's worth getting a mental image. In this article, the secondary link there, this picture is of an electrostatic motor, or the innards of it. These, if you can see the plates, work like a capacitor, making electricity turn a motor without the windings of copper. And this is actually a production model, probably a small one, this particular image that's on this secondary article. But the main article talks about the fully functioning large motor, which might make electric cars and other such items much more efficient. And it's electronics, which are right on the border of our main scope of things. So I thought maybe it's worth having in our agenda on a short month, because we don't have an awful lot of other stuff in this agenda. Hot internet. Or before I go, does anybody have comments about the other two articles there? Well, they're probably out of our mainstream here. Okay.
I just want to talk about batteries. J.B.
Yes.
Straubel, who is a co-founder of Tesla, started a battery recycling company
Mm-hmm.
specifically for that. I
I
have
wouldn't.
his.
Go ahead.
Yeah, here's an article I brought up. I'll just post it to.
There it is in Time magazine.
Yeah. He left Tesla and started that battery recycling immediately. It's been there several years.
Recycling is a major issue with electronics of all sorts, and battery issues with the lithium. It's a thing that needs to be made as efficient as possible, and we hope we'll be able to keep using these batteries for a long time without running out. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, so we get into the social media sphere as we enter the hot internet topic. The San Francisco Airport Museum has begun exploring using the Fediverse ActivityPub protocol that is the underlying software structure of Mastodon and the rest of the federated social media platforms. ActivityPub is able to make an item have access to the internet through software and a database. This museum is attempting to give its collection of artifacts each an account on the internet by way of ActivityPub, so that a user of Mastodon or any of the other software social media platforms can actually follow and keep track of that artifact, finding out about it, talking around it with other people interested by replying or sending messages of their own to that item in the museum, and building community around actual physical objects that are in the museum. And I don't know how it works, but this article was very interesting as an exploratory effort by the by the technologists at the museum. It would not surprise me if they become a leader in exploring this kind of thing, so that you could track one of their museum items in a really practical way online. We unfortunately need to skip over the FOSS tools to identify the source of online photos that Dick was going to present to us because he's not here. I'll try to pick these items up that are Dick's from this month and shift them over into December.
Yeah, I actually wrote software when my son-in-law was working at the Federal Public Defender's Office in Boston. I wrote some software for him to graphically show the origin of a photo. Again, using, I think, GTK or Qt, I forget what it was.
And that would go right along with what Dick will present to us, as
Yep.
I saw a clip out of his comment in the Discuss mailing list.
Yep.
So, for those of you who are not social media people, for a while there was, or there may still be, a social media platform called Truth Social, which is Trump's media empire. And users have unfortunately been scammed on the platform, which is really unfortunate. Though some might say they were in the wrong place at the wrong time anyway. One person says they lost $170,000 while they were scammed by one and then by another. Sad. Be vigilant in your use of any online resource. That's the thing to take away from this, whether you're on Truth Social or any other. Listen to those phone calls that you get from numbers you don't recognize telling you that you have taxes that you owe. And if you owe over $10,000 in taxes, this company will get you out of it. Just back. Give them the information and they'll cancel your taxes. That's something that I have had 5 times in the last 3 weeks. Now, I don't owe any back taxes, so I'm okay. I recognize very quickly that that is not a good call. It's a spam call, as they say. Anybody else have hot internet items? Okay. Computer security. Apparently, Firefox has had a recent 0-day attack. I've just recently updated mine. It's now 132.01, which I believe takes care of this particular flaw. But be aware, any software that you use, now 131.02 has addressed the issue and mine's 132, so I can relax. But when Firefox runs on your system, pay attention to the chance to upgrade it. Don't put it off any longer than you have to. That's the recommendation here. We also had many Windows machines whose update process was moderated and performed by way of a CloudStrike activity, a CloudStrike being a security vendor for Microsoft Cloud tools, as I understand it. And the CloudStrike people had a configuration failure and mucked with a whole bunch of Windows machines, presumably mostly in corporate settings. I don't know if anybody who has a personal computer was involved in the CloudStrike problem, but it made a challenging month for anybody using a corporate Windows machine. And Dick had an interest in talking about that. So that will be one I pass along till next time. And finally, the electric car is not the only issue at hand. When you have electric cars, a whole bunch of information has to go back to the company. It has to do that in order for the car to do the work it's supposed to. And when your electric car company goes bankrupt, not that Tesla will, but there was this EV electric vehicle maker named Fisker who were called software software-based cars. There are many hundreds, if not more, of these Fisker cars out there which can't send their information anywhere because the company's out of business. They shut down their servers, and suddenly all those cars are just boat anchors. If they could get them as far as the edge of the sea to push them in, they're not worth 10 cents the way they are, because you can't run a software-based car without access to software. Jerry, I hope that you and Dick, who has a Chevy version of an electric vehicle, get the chance to enjoy your cars for a long, long time.
I don't think either General Motors or Tesla are going bankrupt anytime soon.
That's good news for you. And Jerry says that the Fedora repo has 132.02 for his Fedora, for his Firefox. Good news, good news. All right. We're down to the last of the topics in general, the artificial intelligence and large language models group. Interestingly, this article describes the Apple Corporation scientists taking a long look at generative artificial intelligence and coming to the decision that while they have many very positive things that they can do, they believe that Apple should not invest heavily at this time to make generative use of artificial intelligence, large language modeling for writing their automobile, they're writing their hardware, the software for their hardware. And my understanding is that Apple had a division that was involved in developing an Apple software for automotive use, and they've pretty much shut that division down. And this long article talks about those problems, and I thought, it's very technical, but maybe the right group of people reading it would learn something good that would help them in their own understanding. Anybody know more than I do about that kind of issue? I see no comments, no raised hands. So I'll go back to finishing these off. The Software Freedom Conservancy is one of the many free software support and advocacy groups. The Free Software Foundation here in Boston, Software Freedom Conservancy, the Linux Foundation to some extent, where Linus Torvalds is employed, are facing the question of whether or not we can have a free software open source AI with large language models or otherwise. And this article really talks about that potential as an aspirational statement. as opposed to this is a concrete plan and here's our recommendations. In spite of the rush that has been made in proprietary AI, this article discusses making plans for whether a true open source large language model based artificial intelligence process is a good idea and or attainable. And I think they want to see one, but I don't know whether they expect to see one soon. Anybody have experience with this at any level? I think we're going up at the top of a user's discussion area. And while most of us here are advanced users in many ways, some of these articles are going to be a stretch for a discussion. So I thought it was worth putting in here for those who might learn something from it. And finally, Penguin, the Random House Book Company, has decided that they explicitly will not publish any book, will not allow any published book written by one of their authors to be used in a manner that purposely trains artificial intelligence technologies or systems. And I don't know what effect that's going to have. Maybe too little, too late. All the old books that are out don't have this mechanism put in, don't have this phrase put into their, I don't know what it's called, the impressum. I think it's something like that. It's what you see at the front of every book about copyright and ownership and rules, what can and can't do with fair use. These guys are specifically telling AI companies no. I think it's an interesting reality that we have to consider that as people who may or may not create something. Well, I would like to say thank you at 4:23 while we take a look at whether there are further questions and answers or whether Dennis has a game of the month to give us. We haven't had one of those for a while. And we're not going to see samples from Dick's junk mail because he's not with us today. Anything that we should revisit on this list before I stop sharing? Nobody spoke. So stop sharing. And questions, comments, additions?
And for me, Bob, I thought the presentation was excellent, by the way.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about it, I mean, I know nothing about Mint other than having installed it a couple of times, is that it does corrections on the fly.
What kind of corrections are we talking about here?
So you said it fixed things on the fly while it was installing?
Oh, the installer does have a mechanism to fix issues where you need to downgrade something or where there's a foreign package. And it can reconcile a lot of stuff, though not everything. Sometimes you have to go in manually and do it the same way you would in any other distro. One thing I do like about the way Mint Cinnamon is now is that the desktop seems to be sharper, quicker, more responsive than it was. And there are other things about Mint that just it seems like the underlying engine is more powerful now. And it ought to be with an upgraded kernel.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am glad we had the chance to get together in our slightly reduced group. Next month is December, and at the beginning of the month, our first Thursday is the 5th of December. And between now and then, we have the opportunity to gather together our new concepts, and I'll pull stuff over from this agenda that we didn't cover with Dick and Jill absent. Let me just mention that, Jerry, I need to spend some time with you offline to deal with the mailing list bounces. And
Okay.
I don't want to try to take this group's time, but I want to make sure I didn't forget to mention that. Your account came up, your Gmail account came up as one of the ones that has been bounced too many times. So
Okay.
I'm not sure you're getting all the discussed mail.
Yeah, I might not. I'll have to turn it back on.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I had some audio issues, and in KDE, the plasma shell crashed twice trying to pair a Bluetooth device. For some reason, it pairs, then it unpairs, and it pairs, and then it unpairs automatically. I don't know why, but I had it send automated crash reports for both. I assume that went to KDE and not OpenSUSE. Regarding mailman bounces, have also mentioned this to Jerry. The XFCE desktop, their mailing lists also use mailman. And the email address that I used to subscribe to was suspended from that list because of too many bounces. So I changed the email address on that, and I have sent the list owner 2 emails already asking for information why these emails were bouncing, because the email address was valid. And the second email I sent today, but didn't receive any response to the first one I sent.
What I am seeing on the notes that I get from our server, the list server software sends me notes and tells me about these bounced accounts. It's related, I think, to Gmail as a receiving server. Gmail requires every possible confirmation that you aren't spam before it lets your messages go through their server. Just how that happens is something Jerry and I will try to figure out, and how we can set our accounts so that messages from our listserv go correctly to Gmail. It doesn't appear that it's most accounts, it's just these requirements. There are 3 or 4 different names.
Yeah.
Gmail gets upset when forwarders forward something claiming it came from Gmail, and Gmail knows it didn't come from Gmail because it's Gmail. But you can, in your Gmail settings, you can set do not process as spam anything that comes from NatickFOSS or whatever college alumni mail forwarder you have or whatever. But that's on the recipient configuration side. That's something the person who's getting suspended needs to do, not something the list admin can do. What the list admin can do is turn on return address rewriting so that instead of saying that Bill at Gmail sent this to NatickFOSS, Bill care of NatickFOSS sent this. And so that the return address is not to the author, but is, and that works if you're willing to have a reply to list where the default is to do the thing that somebody might not want to do and is unfixable, as opposed to the default is to do what they might want to do, but it is fixable. I can resend to the list, but I can't resend privately if I accidentally send to the list.
There are a
I'm
number of
going
things
around in circles on that one.
there are a number of things that we can do on a server, like SPF, which you actually mentioned, Algana. We have SPF is correct on.
SPF will keep you from getting kicked if
Yes.
you're doing digest or address rewriting.
Yes.
If you're passing through each message effectively as a relay with the original sender's address, convincing Google that you're not forging return addresses is going to be difficult.
Yep.
Because your SPF does not identify you as an authorized sender for gmail.com, which is my return address.
Yep. So we've got that. There's some DMARC stuff in.
Occasionally, Yahoo Mail runs into that issue.
Also, yes.
Because Yahoo really caused a lot of trouble. It basically, when it enabled DMARC, it basically shut down all mailman lists, not just ours. And
Yeah, it has happened with others.
I got
Yes.
kicked, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Did we come up with a solution while I was gone?
Nope.
Okay.
I'll just look at what we have.
Okay, in my case with the XFCE list, the email domain is controlled by AOL/Yahoo and is no longer open to new email addresses. The problem that I find with filtering, I see this on the XFCE list and also on BLU Discuss. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, but the from name and address is the person that sent the email.
That is correct. That
Okay.
has been the default on Mailman forever. And we've debated that. We've debated that for many, many years.
Okay, and that seems to be the one of the issues, because I cannot, because of that, I'm not able to filter any of these messages, like, because nothing comes in from discuss at BLU or discuss at NatickFOSS. I cannot do a filter to automatically direct those messages to the inbox. And
you certainly can.
It doesn't
use the
work on,
subject.
it does not work on AOL because I've tried it many times.
What do you mean it doesn't work?
I've even looked at the tried specific headers to look for this server address. That didn't work either.
You can't look at the subject.
Yes, I can see the subject.
The subject always has NatickFOSS in it, and it's different for board and different for the discuss list, and it's in square brackets.
Right.
It's put in there automatically by mailman.
Yeah. Now I'm not having any issues with NatickFOSS. The ones that keep going into spam, or in this case bouncing, would be the BLU and the XFIS list.
BLU discuss actually has that in the subject. I can double check.
Because if they another issue that it's another thing that's spam related is my main email at Comcast, which goes back to day one when we flipped from Media One to Comcast. Because of the database breaches that Comcast has had, all the emails are out onto the dark web. And 99% of the spam messages that I get are not from @gmail.com, but when I look at the raw headers, they're all going through Google servers. And Google does not have an email address to report this. So when I tried as a test to block if the header contains google.com, throw it in the spam filter, but that didn't work.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to solve the issue here. And Dennis, this need not be a part of the recording. If we can cut that part out, we'll work on solving the problem, because there are about 5 or 6 accounts